Do you like my shirt? Look at my shirt. It says, I can't adult today. I wore it to work because I didn't want to adult today. I was in a cult for 7 years. It was a Bible-based cult. I strongly believe it was most definitely a cult. I have like this lighting going in and out. I think it's because like the sun is going down. Okay, so I was in a cult for like 7 years. Bible-based Christian cult. Non-denominational, but very judgmental. And I'm like trying not to make this video long at all because it's just so much stuff I could really say about it. It started off with my best friend from high school introduced me to it. I had no idea what I was getting into, and so my best friend introduced me to this church, and she like just threw me in this Bible study. I had no idea that the Bible study was actually a Bible study for me. And so the people seemed really nice. I went to a couple of services. The Bible study, I thought it was like supposed to be like a group thing, but it was actually a targeted thing. So it was just them asking me a bunch of questions and blah, blah, blah. I started to catch on and see what they were doing, asking me questions like as if, you know, they were trying to interview me on how much I knew about God. And so I wasn't feeling it, so I stopped. My husband, we weren't married at the time yet. I think right before we got engaged, he had went to a couple of the services of this particular church and he really liked it. And so they have like churches in different areas. Like they have one based in different cities and states and all that stuff, even out in other countries. And so when we got married, he was like, oh, let's start going to it. So I was not feeling it. I remember the first time I went with him to the first service, he had been going and I was not going with him. I was comfortable going to the previous church that we were attending. And so we go, and this guy, he introduces me to this guy that he's doing studies with. And the guy comes up to me and he's like, so when are you going to start doing studies? And I'm like, study what? And he's like, Bible studies, like your husband. You know, you got to get on gear. You got to get on board with him. And I'm like, slow your roll. I am not here to do no Bible studies. I come for emotional support from my spouse. Make a very long story short, I ended up doing Bible studies. I felt very uncomfortable in the beginning because the studies were very, very extremely invasive. And I thought maybe this was like a normal process. The Bible studies were actually supposed to lead up to my baptism. At the end of the studies, I did a lot of studies. It was like, I think it was like somewhere between 8 and 10 studies. I could be off. But basically, at the end of the studies, the people you're studying with, they make the decision on whether or not they feel that you're ready for a baptism. So I had like a tub baptism. I was completely submerged. Is it submerged or emerged? Submerged in the water. And they like threw a whole big party for me, made a big deal out of it. So when I started going to this church and I felt like I have family, I felt like, wow, these people really love me. They really care about me. And I got along with everybody. It started off really good. I started to change. I grew up going to church, so it wasn't something brand new to me, but the experience was very different. It was not something I've ever experienced before. Like, it was something totally new to me because people were super duper nice. Like, I want to say almost kind of like overly nice, but at the time I was like, there's no such thing as being too nice or overly nice. Like, either you're nice or you're not. I thought these people just had a good heart of Jesus Christ. So I was like, this is good. This is a good thing. But I changed a lot, and I slowly started to see things were very strange. I had noticed like everyone kind of acted the same. You know, it's like hard to really explain. Like, for example, I feel like no one had their own individuality. Like, everybody sounded the same, they dressed the same, they acted the same. It was like no one was themselves, and I was almost afraid to be myself. And I'm very comfortable with being myself, so I kind of felt like I didn't have to change for anybody. I kind of automatically, without thinking twice, was myself. And so when the other members were seeing that, they felt like they needed to wheel me in, and they didn't needed to like change me up. So they would try to tell me how to dress. Oh, you gotta dress like this, or you gotta dress like that for your husband. He might find somebody else if you don't do these things. They try to tell me how to do so many things, how to be a mom. I just felt very controlled, and I do not like to be told what to do. I was told who I should and shouldn't be friends with. I was told who I should and shouldn't hang out around or talk to. And so it was a lot of controlling ways that the church members had that I was not feeling at all. I did not feel comfortable. So there were times where I thought I should just leave and go to another church, but I was so afraid because this church would always say, we're the one true church of Christ. And a lot of the people felt that if either you're in this church or you're not going to heaven. So that was what I was always taught in this church. I was taught and told that if you're not a part of this church, then you're not doing the right thing, because no other church teaches based 100% following scripture the way this church does. So I would go to church on Sunday and see other people going to church, and in my mind I would feel bad for them. I would think like, oh, I feel bad for that person because they're probably not going to heaven. Their church isn't teaching them the right thing. I wish they'd go to my church. And so I started to develop that thinking. And the recruitment process, it was like, it's pure manipulation. You know, they tell you all these wonderful things to kind of try to get you to come into their circle, but then once you're already in it, you start to experience things, and you think it's you changing. You think, oh, it's just me, I'm changing for God. And people around you are telling you like, you know, you're changing, you're a totally different person. And you're like, yes, I am. I'm fired up for God. That was the words they'd use. I'm fired up for God. And so I became that person, and other people were like, oh, Tina's changing, she's not the same, blah, blah, blah. So a couple of experiences led up to me finally leaving. At one point, I wanted to leave, but I knew my husband wouldn't want to go because he didn't see things the way I did. And I always kind of had that feeling deep down, like, you know, something doesn't feel right. Like, I think I should leave. But I could not get myself to do it. And so I stayed. And then I took a break, like a hiatus. So God forbid you wouldn't come to church for one freaking Sunday. They'll call you. They would knock on my door. I would try to avoid them. I'm like, leave me the hell alone. They'll call me at 5, 6 in the morning on a freaking Saturday when I had no work and try to pray with me and make it seem like you have to pray as soon as you wake up. There was just way too many rules. You had to do everything a certain way. You had to do everything by the book. I feel like I'm not really describing it in enough detail. It's just that if I do this video, it's going to be crazy long because it's just a certain way that this cult was. And they would basically try to change you through manipulation and making you feel like you were doing something wrong. And if you don't do the right way, you don't do it the way they're telling you to do it, then you're not doing the right thing and you're not going to go to heaven. And everything was so hooked on going to heaven. I felt like I always had to live my life according to their standards, not the Bible standards, but they would say it was the Bible standards. Anytime I made a decision on something, I had to seek advice first. Like, I got hired for a new job, and my discipling partner who would disciple me, she got upset at me because I didn't come to her on my decision. I told her I was offered a new job, and I was super excited. It was a job I wanted. And she was like, oh, well, what about church? I was like, well, it's Monday through Friday. And she's like, oh, but you don't want it to take you away from the Bible and from our church family and our group members and blah, 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 and all the church events and all this bull crap, because I actually had a full-time job, and the job I got accepted for was a part-time job. And I accepted it because I thought it would lead me to a good full-time opportunity. It was a possibility. And so I took the job. And so this woman got very upset. She was actually also my friend. Or so I thought she was. She got really upset that I accepted the job. And she kind of like got mad, like as if I was doing something wrong. And I felt bad, like my bad. I wanted to take the job. it's just things like that that they would do. Every time you do something, you have to ask advice. You have to seek advice. But really, it's not seeking advice. It's really just seeking permission. And what else? They, always invasive in my relationship. I could never have an issue in my marriage without them having to know what was going on. Me and my husband had to go to our discipling partners for advice all the time. And got to a point where my husband would get so he would get so used to having to go to them that he would be like, oh, in the middle of an argument, let's just stop arguing. Let's wait till Sunday. We're going to talk to so-and-so and so-and-so, and then we'll get it figured out. And then I was just like, no, how about we settle this now just between us? They don't have to know all of our business. And he felt I was in the wrong. And it's not his fault. It's just because that's just how they taught us. They would teach you that you need to be humble and not be prideful, because according to the Bible and scripture, it's a sin to be prideful and to not be humble. And so he thought that I wasn't being humble because that's what they would teach us. And it wasn't that. It's just that I felt like when I became a part of this church, I felt like I lost my individuality. I lost my sense of privacy. I lost my sense of right to choose. And to this day, they will never admit that, but that's exactly what that is when you join a Bible-based cult. I always thought that cults were like, something you join and then you just like, you join the cult and then they do these crazy rituals and you wear these weird outfits and your hair is up. I never knew, I was not knowledgeable at all. I didn't even know. It wasn't until I really dug into information, I had people on the outside telling me, you really need to dig up your information. And I found out that this church actually was accused of being a cult years ago, back in the 80s and early 90s. And they say that they changed, but they really didn't change all that much. They changed up a little bit, they're not as strict, but they still have a lot of their same ways. So I finally left. It's been now about a year since I have been out of my Bible-based cult. I don't talk to anyone that was in the cult with me. I've been completely cut off from everybody, not by choice. They decided not to talk to me anymore. I started off going to different churches outside of this cult, and they didn't like it. They didn't approve of it. People I thought was my friends, they didn't approve of it at all. They felt like, well, you're supposed to be going here, and that church might not be teaching you the right things. And so they feel like they can't communicate with any outsiders, because if you're not a part of the church, you're considered an outsider. So to this day, a year and a half later, I don't talk to anyone from there at all. The only people I talk to are people who've actually left with me. It was a long process. I'm gonna make a part 2 to this video because I want to upload this video because this video is pretty long and I don't have enough time on my camera for me to be able to tell you everything. But that's just my experience of the cult. In my second video, I'll talk about how I left, why I left, what I experienced. And then I'll probably make a part 3 if that video is too long, where I'll tell you guys the symptoms of a cult, how to know you're in a Bible-based cult. Because I feel like these things are very important. These are things that need to be discussed. And it's something that's been very hard for me to deal with. It's gotten easier as time's gone on, but it's definitely changed a lot in my religious walk. A lot. Okay, so I'm gonna wrap this video up and I will see you in part 2. Thanks for watching.